The following is a keynote speaker presentation from the ACM 97 conference, The Next 50 Years of Computing. ACM 97 brought together over 2,000 leaders and luminaries from all aspects of the computing world to discuss and predict what the next 50 years of computing has in store. ACM 97 underwriters were Computer World, Hewlett-Packard, Intel, Microsoft, and Sun Microsystems. Sponsors were Cadmus Journal Services, IBM, Netscape, Popular Science, Sheridan Printing Company Incorporated, Silicon Graphics Incorporated, SoftBank, and Unisys. The event also included a major exposition with a paleotechnic look back to the future from the year 2047, and a specially commissioned book, Beyond Calculation, featuring essays on the next 50 years of computing by luminaries and pioneers in the field. The ACM 97 conference was chaired by Robert Metcalf and emceed by James Burke. Details on how to obtain more information on ACM 97 follow this program.
Ladies and gentlemen, James Burke.
Our next speaker this morning is regarded rightly by many as one of the leading scholars in the field of management today. A couple of career highlights. He was the provost of the Catholic University in Santiago, Chile at the tender age of 27. He was also technical manager of a large conglomerate, also the director of the Inter-American Bank, president of the Chilean Institute of Technology, and directed a project to apply cybernetics to management. In '76, he came to Palo Alto, where he began research at Stanford, where he met and also co-authored the classic book, Understanding Computers and Cognition, with Terry Winograd. In 1979, he received his PhD from Berkeley for a dissertation called Management and Communication in the Office of the Future. This speaker has devoted more than 30 years now to the study of how we do what we do, how human beings work together, and his field, as you will hear, combines the disciplines of linguistics, philosophy, computer science, and management, as they may all be applied to the vital matter of doing deals. At Business Design Associates, which he founded, his multidisciplinary approach to business brings a fascinating new view of what it is we all do and how we do it. Here to speak on the long-term impact of information technologies on business, please welcome Dr. Fernando Flores.
We are going to be two people with accent today, him and me. I have been asking for the organizer of the conference to talk about the future of computing and business in the next 50 years. The title said business and communication. I take the communication out because I believe that all computers are communication and all business communication. The question is how you talk about that. And in my opinion, the computer science and technicians talk about communication in a language that business people don't talk, and business people talk in a business in a language that the others don't talk, and there is a big gap there that have enormous consequences. And my contribution here is to try to cover this gap. Then, I don't think that I have been asked to make predictions. And predictions are impossible today. We are coming back to understand what people understand in Middle Ages. We live in the world of uncertainty. That's the human world. Control is very limited. Also, we begin to understand, like the Secretary of Defense said, more freedom, more uncertainty. We fight for freedom, we are increasing uncertainty. And the third aspect is that there are more innovation. And more innovation, by definition, is more unpredictability. Then we are going in a world of more uncertainty, and we need to develop emotion to live with that. And what I want to talk today is about what gives us the right to do this kind of speculations. And I say there are 4 factors that I'm going to tell to you and organize my talk. First thing, I believe you can, in certain circumstances, be a storyteller about how marginal practices go to the center. Yesterday, I saw here Doug Engelbart, and I saw him, I admired him, and I said, who believes that when programmers begin to do line editors, the line editor in some moment by Doug Engelbart, Alan Kane, and other people, and transforming an industry that make typewriter disappear. The typewriter owner never see the marginal editors. The marginal practice, in my opinion, is a way to look the future already in the past that is our present. The second thing that you can do to try to do an articulate interpretation is sometimes argue that there are fundamental recurrences that have been discovered but not just exploited. You can see this in science all the time. The DNA was a hypothesis of a fundamental recurrence. 4 basic sequences explain everything. And the real understanding, when I say not only intellectual, pragmatical understanding, produced in 75 what we call today biotechnology. So biotechnology is impossible if the scientists don't grasp that. I believe that we are not going to have a good contribution of this technology to human beings if we don't begin to investigate also what human mind is. I want to tell you a little bit what my prejudices are. I was educated like engineer, and I was educated like philosopher. Like philosopher, I was trained in this country in English philosophy and German philosophy. I also live in Chile. I was a political prisoner for a while, and I was Minister of Finance at 28 years old. In this experience, what I learned basically was 2 things: how trust can be broken and how patience can be gained. And finally, the other experience important in my life has been being a father and being married for 35 years and having 6 kids, 5 grandchildren, also teach something to you. From that prejudice, I want to talk. I don't have other way to talk. And finally, to avoid that my prejudice kill me, I have friends. And my friends discuss with me, fight with me, give me certain direction. The essence of what I have to say to here is that what is going on here with this technology, what you call the cyberspace, using Gordon Benn's idea, is not a technological revolution. It's a change in the way that human beings relate. And we human beings are essential relationships. And if we change the relationship, we are also changing the way that we work and the way that we make business. Business is a space of social relationship. Then we need to investigate how social relations are changing in business and how technology is affecting and vice versa these things. But this extended further than business. It's also we are changing the way that we relate with ourselves. It's a big transformation of the self. And that's the central issue. I saw many of the questions that I saw yesterday, some of the speakers had this question: what kind of human being we begin to be? That's how big the question could be. I'm not going to be so big, but I want to deal with part of that. For doing this presentation, I will say, let me talk a little bit about language and recurrences. This industry has a tendency to confuse communication and information. Like they were the same thing. And I see again and again. And I see there are 2 different phenomena. Information has to do with what is present and can be asserted. If you have a record, you can assert. But communication has to do with a successful living together. So communication has to do with the intentional coordination of actions. And I believe what the web is producing, what this technology is producing, is shifting the space of human communication. There are communities that cannot be formed before. There are transactions that cannot happen before. There are volumes that cannot happen before. That's what really is interesting, And finally, there are kind of new political organizations that are going to arise from all this. For doing this presentation, I have divided the historical time in 3 ages, and I'm going to show 2 of them now. I call the age of need and the age of convenience. The industrial age is there like precedent. I will not talk about that. And I said, to the age of need, we have a technological age, the age that I want to call the age of information. And for the age of convenience, I'm going to call it technological age that I want to call the coordination of commitment. And let me explain what I mean by these things. Need was a certain kind of relation that business and people have. People have desire, companies satisfy the desire, making products, and they make planning to improve that more and better. Still, you see some of the relation in certain kind of product, but every day less. I cannot go to a supermarket here and find bread. People asking me a big question, what kind of bread are? What kind of health I want to cultivate? We are in a different age. In the age of need, we are defined by their desires. And what they need, what people needed was transactions. Information was, at the beginning, clerical word to reckon transaction. But the deal was happening in the conversation. The transaction happened after. The transaction was important for control and was important for IRS. Was not important for people. That produced massive complexity. And that's why when the computer arrived, at the beginning, the computer is a data processing machine. Don't forget that the computer was invented for military purpose. It was a marginal invention bring to business by the vision of some business people. And it began to be a super tabulating machine. And since this day, we adopt this terminology, that everything is transaction, everything is information. But let us begin to look also certain dreams that were in that ages. And that was the time I was to the university. We have the following equations: more data, more knowledge, more power. We are beginning to discover that not necessarily true. Today we are living in the age of inflation of data. We need less data. We are talking about filter. We are talking about agents. And we are beginning to distinguish also between knowledge and power. They are interconnected, but power has to do with actions. The second thing, we have a hope that more powerful rational models with the right data are going to be better for us. I was educated in operation research. Some of my friends were educated in artificial intelligence. Yes, we learned to produce models. We learned to produce certain expert systems. But the big problem of human rationality, we look today totally different. It looks like a dream. What we are beginning to discover, like the essence of human rationality, there's a book just called Emotional Intelligence, it has to do with human interaction. And in the moment that the network appears, human interaction begins to be in the center. What is happening in computer today is a new kind of worker that is not a knowledge worker. It's an interactive worker. But still, we continue talking about information technology. Let us go to what I see going now. 10, 50 years ago, slowly, maybe 20, I don't know exactly what to say, but what I can speculate, is going to stay for another 20, 25 years. The world is going to go for a called the age of convenience. And the age of convenience consists basically in the following. People don't want product. People want product that come with service, that come with training, that can with maintenance, that can on time, that I don't travel with them. They appear when we need it. Timing and location begin to be very important. And for doing this, I call people need now for companies promise of conditional satisfactions. We don't need object. The object is trivial. The object can be delivered by someone else. Domino Pizza don't produce better cheese or ham, produce a promise. Federal Express don't produce more quick delivery, but produce a promise of delivery that honor. And we begin to see all around. I am working with banks. I am working with engineering company. I am working with manufacturer. And everyone has the same problem, how we organize, coordinate, and use this technology. My opinion that the explosion of business re-engineering was the hope of it, but they get the thing wrong. They begin to re-engineer the flows of paper and now begin to see that the central issue is people. We cannot do that transformation without bringing ethics to the center. Because what the commitment is a flexible bond in time. The essence of a commitment is that happen in a time and have a future. And during this time, we are bound. But it's not a rigid commitment. It's a flexible commitment. People are expecting for something that can be attended, like we go to the airline, but also we can cancel without big cost for us. And companies to be ready for that. And I saw in all the world go in this direction. The second phenomenon that is happening, like we people, like customers, are not willing to tolerate delays, rules that we don't need. People are not willing to tolerate today immense bureaucratic inventories. People, the convenience for the customer is also convenient for capital. People don't want working capital. I saw a big movement in the world today, which ideally is working capital equals zero. We want to have convenient coordination. More convenient coordination we can reach, better for the client, better for the service, better for people. For doing that, we are going to need two things that are already happening. First, we need systems. We don't need software. We need systems. We need software for maybe for this system, but I want to insist, we need systems that are support of coordination of commitment. In the article that appeared in the book or the conference, I talk more about that. In my work with Terry, I talk more about that. I'm not going to talk about that today. But it's a serious work. We don't need electronic mail. We need tool for work. And work is to be responsible of a network of commitment that define us. That's what we need, and we need filter there. The second thing that we need, and that's part of what I spend my time, we need also ethical transformation of people. For me, one of my big pleasures is that I look Mexican, but I'm Chilean. And most of the European and American, particularly American, they don't distinguish between Chiles and Chiapas. In people with Chi. And because I have a Mexican face, they look at me. And every time I go to work with a big company, particularly in Germany, Switzerland, that has a reputation of punctuality and rules, they bring me, a Mexican. For bringing, you know what? Impeccability. It's not funny? That's the big transformation of the world. And why is happening this? Because the impeccability of the old rule, rigid, doesn't work anymore. We need flexible impeccability. That means, first, good listening, no imposing requirement. Every company that I see listen, requirement, and need, fail. I am very clear that Microsoft don't invent Windows by listening requirement. They invented ahead. Every leader invent the product ahead. Intel invent their products ahead. We are today, the leading company are leading the space of reality for people. The Germans are not doing that. In my opinion, the Japanese are not doing that. And I have a problem. And you see this problem in the 90s. This is the age of convenience at the level of customer. This is the age of coordination of commitment at the level of production. I want to say something for my fellow Latin Americans that are here. There are one here. There are several Mexican and professors that I know. We Latin Americans don't have chance in the future if we don't bring our culture to produce impeccability. It is no, we are going to be maquileros, selling cheap labor. And selling cheap labor is going to create poverty forever. And for this country, it's going to be a big problem of defense. For the goodness of this country and for the goodness of us, we need to participate in this culture. And that's what I feel is one of the things I am doing. But I want to say also that the age of convenience and the age of coordination, the age of flexibility is going to be certain problems. And I see that these problems are beginning already to show up. Let me point out 3 problems that I see. Directionlessness. People don't know what to do next. People in the age of need used to look the past. I came here to live in '76, and that's the way that people invented the time of strategic planning. What you are going to do next, more and better, and a little bit different, and that's all. But now the things are radically different. I have seen the book of Andrew Grove that many of you have read, no? Only a Paranoid Can Survive. I like the spirit of the book. I don't know the word paranoid. I have seen what Microsoft has made to react to the net. That's what you need to do. This is the moment of tectonic change. Brutal change of reality in the whole ecological niche in which your customer, provider, supplier, and competitor change. You are not going to find that looking. And for doing that, people say you need vision. No, you need vision, but vision is not a strategic planning. Vision is not expertise. I just went to see a company, a steel company in this country. It was very interesting. The conference was about innovation, and people were a lot of experts. And in some moment, the expert began to say, why you don't look your company like an architecture company? And people said, that's very nice that the architect said that. Another person said, well, what you need to do is position your brand. You know the steel cement company, they never talk about brand. Then it looked like interesting again. Another person said, well, you are really good if moving heavy materials. What you need to do is a logistic company. In that moment, I don't have your instrument, but I asked it to people, how do you feel? I said, we feel more ideas, but more disoriented. Right. That's what lack of direction is. We cannot find our future by listening to experts. We need experts to open horizons. But for inventing our future, we need to have a strong identity that are flexible. And then we are entered what I call the third age. And that's the age that gives me more problem to put names. I play with all these names that you see there: uncertainty, unsettlement, cultivating concern, and finally, I pick up shifting concern. What is the difference between a concern and a need? A concern is when you listen the long-run interests of people that cannot pass away, like, for example, health, education, the body, having a job, raising a family. But on the other hand, the concern are never product. They are not need. The concern need to be interpreted and packaged. And the package is what is changing all the time. That's why I said we are in the age of shifting concern. Look what is happening today. I am working with banks. What are banks today? They used to be very important, clear, well-defined business. A great part of the bank is going to be a bunch of computers connected with terminal and things. Is it a software company? No. But it's another part of the bank, a good part of the bank, that used to keep relationships. The relations are not going to be with the computer. And banks today are all kind of banks thinking what we are going to be, what we are going to do. Then we need to deal with the issue of identities. And we need to deal with the issue of identities like individuals and like persons. And my whole claim, I'm going to anticipate the claim before I finish and repeat twice, is that we cannot invent our identity looking the past of what we do. We used to do that in the age of need. Today we need to take a stand about the future. And the central thing is to discover who we are. Yesterday, Gordon Bell talked about the convenience to look history. My experience is that every good entrepreneur that I know, every innovator that I know is a amateur historian. Because without looking history, we don't understand our nature. A great part of what we do are practices that are in the background, that we don't think about that, but they come from the past. The other day I was talking with Alan Kay, and he asked me the question, do you know, Fernando, why books are numbers? Because you said Gutenberg didn't do that. And he gave me a lesson of history. He said, it has to do with Erasmus. When people begin to want to have discussion, they want to refer to what page it was. In that moment, they need to make numbers. That's interesting. And I said, interesting. Alan Kay is a computer science, but like me, he's an amateur historian. Then I said, this is the first thing that we need to do for discover who we are. We need to discover what our relations think about us, where our relations are going, where the industry is going, where other industries are going. And inside this, we need to fall in love with what I call marginal practice. Let me say what marginal practice are. I already said, though, marginal practice is something that someone is doing in another central thing or belong to an industry. For being leader, we need to fall in love with the cultivation of marginal practice. But for being leader, we need to accept too that we cannot be good for everything. And that people are afraid. And that's why I think that the other two diseases I showed before, and I didn't talk, are relevant. How we are feeling today, without direction, scattered, too many things. People talk about information overload. I believe information overload is the consequence of lack of clarity about who we are. Then, this skill we need to develop in the school, in other places. And what is the third thing that we need to do about develop a strong identity? The strong identity needs to be developed with others. In that sense, I believe the Silicon Valley, more I look at Silicon Valley, more I admire the kind of culture that has been showing here, how people can have companies that compete and cooperate and define niche one with the other. It's a more similar thing to the north of Italy that I know, that is the other place that happened. The leader here, including the big leader, start small. They start small and they need to do relationship. And then these are the other two skills that we need to have. First, we need to begin to develop certain strong relationships like marriages for the future. Let us see what marriage is when we work. Marriage is not a contract for the rest of the life, despite that it's said sometime in the pronouncement, but it's a serious engagement. It's open, don't define condition satisfaction. It's not about need, it's not about convenience. It's about being partner in good and bad time for the time that we are partners. At the same time, opportunism is seriously penalized. And companies do this with stock options to the strong partners. We are having a lot of new relations to deal with these things. And I think this is going to be an important principle that is going to be to extend to the rest of the economy. We are going to have also loyal clients. What I like the people that use a certain fashion, like for example, Laura Ashley, Ralph Lauren, they have loyal clients. Because they are married with what? They are married with style. The second thing that we need to do is to find our niche in what I call an ecological web of clients, an ecological web of allies. We cannot do the thing without finding a role. And the third thing that we need to do is project our identities. And inside this, I enjoy immensely the talk yesterday of Brian Ferris. I coincide totally with him. I believe that the central skill human beings need to be leaders, entrepreneurs, and good person is to be a storyteller about themselves. But a storyteller that bring care to others, concern to another. We need to be seductive offer for the future. And I believe if we begin to be this kind of being, we are going to be able to deal with this problem of directionlessness and scattering. If we don't go in this direction, that is one possibility. It's what I call the hyper-flexibly postmodern society. We are going to be very weird people. We are going to be weird people connected to computers, never connected with people. We are going to lose social skill, and we are also to lose affect and another interesting things. I don't like this future. I want to fight for this other future. But I don't see other industry that has more relevance for what it's doing today. We are the Henry Ford of the past. Henry Ford was not designing cars. Henry Ford was designing cities, was designing economies, was designing form of life. We are doing that in a lot bigger scale. And my plea to you, let us begin to take seriously what human beings are like narratives. Because we are, what people say from us. And we are what we are because we say certain things and do certain things. What are the two fundamental recurrences that, for me, allow me to be sure about what I am saying, and not tentative? I believe whatever are human beings are going to be human beings making commitment. Offer, promise, request, declining, counter-offer, getting married. If your boss sends you an electronic mail that said, you are fired, that's not a message, that's not information. It's a lot more important than this. If you make an offer to your future wife or husband that you want to marry, that's not passing information. Language, we make a difference in life of people. With language, we invent world with other people. With language, we disclose world in people. What are the kind of storyteller that we are? We are a storyteller of world opening. We are a storyteller of commitment. And yes, we are also the storyteller of information. The last thing I want to say for you, all this what I'm talking is the Fernando Flores that belong to the third world. But I never forget I belong to also to a country that is Chile, that is a country that, despite of the economic success of the last 10 years, still belong to the third world. There are a lot of people that are going to be affected by this technology, but these people have not arrived yet to the age of need. They are still in the age of power, misery, injustice, and lack of dignity. We have a responsibility to think about that. But I suppose that's the issue of another conference. Thank you a lot.